Okie doke. Well, once again, welcome. We are here to answer some questions. Hopefully, sometimes some of these things, especially the question about the teams, we don't have all the answers. The state is still working on all the rules. So, and Carol will be on a little bit to discuss that with you. But first up, we have, so if we can't answer your question today, we will try to follow up and get answers for you. But so we welcome any questions you have. And the first thing we're going to go over this morning with Paula, who is going to be our local president next year, who's right now the chairman of forms, has the new listing agreement to review. So go ahead, Paula.
Morning, everyone. As you know, we rolled out a new listing agreement. The forms worked quite a few months on that. I'm not going to go through the entire listing agreement today, but I do want to make sure everybody here has seen it. There is a video online on YouTube, and I believe you can link it through CTR website where I do go over and explain most of the agreement, but I will give you a slight summary of what the changes are. First, the formatting has changed. It's now 3 pages, consolidated now into 19 titled sections. We added a buyer broker commission section. That was important to add for Smart MLS. We added a checkbox for liens. We did add choices of how the property is to be marketed, including the coming soon and delayed and withdrawn options. We expanded the disclosure section. We added a permitting section. We added an entry and control section, an audio and video surveillance section, which is becoming even more prominent of an issue lately. And we also added a multiple offer and offer section, which is important for our code of ethics. We also changed the way that now how a contract, when the contract actually starts. In the past, it was set up where you would put a start and end date. You would sign the agreement prior to that or on the date that it starts and go forward. Now the contract actually starts on the day that you sign it, similar to kind of how a purchase and sales agreement works. It becomes in effect on the last day of someone signing it. So I'd like to open it up now to any questions or concerns. And of course, if there are any, I can answer to the best of my ability, but I'm one person, even though I'm the chair of the forms committee. It is up to the membership, yourselves, the forms committee itself, to go through any changes or modifications or questions that maybe we didn't think about. So for that, I will open up the room.
Paula, do you want to address the question that came up with Dan Sperduto that the committee discussed and decided not to take any action on?
You're talking about so the last thing I just talked about, which was that the contract becomes effective on the day that you sign the contract rather than a forward date. That decision was made because we felt that client level services typically do start on the day that you're sitting down, going through a contract with someone. You're most likely have done a CMA, or you're about to, you're going to start up talking about staging and photography and setting all those things up. And if you put that date into the future, what you're essentially opening yourself up to is the possibility of starting to do client level services before you're really supposed to start. The question that Dan had and the concern was if a seller comes to you where they're already under a listing contract with another agent, how do you handle that if they want to sign a contract with you right then and there without overlapping?
That's a good question.
And we did put this question to our attorneys because it wasn't something I think we thought about in great detail when we were doing committee work on it. But the consensus was that you could always modify the agreement and say in the additional provisions that the contract date shall not start until, and then put a forward date. But I think that the nature of most relationships is that you're going to want to start it on the day you sign the contract. And if you're going to be sitting down with a seller while they're still under contract with someone else, you probably shouldn't be signing the contract at that point. You should be waiting until that other contract is over with. It gets a little messy. But that was essentially the two. You could always modify it, or you can wait until the other contract is over before you have your signed. So that was the sort of the two different ways of handling it.
And that just stresses the awareness to always ask a potential client if they have any existing agreement. Obviously should go without saying, but we'll just reiterate that here.
So did they say, the attorneys say that you could sign it that day effective the date that the other contract was going to expire?
John Peck's exact response was, in those circumstances, you can always cross out on the date it is signed by all parties and add a date with initials.
Okay. Huh. Okay. Anybody else have questions for Paula on the listing agreement?
I do.
Okay, shoot. Welcome, Donna.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Disclosures of offers. Can you go over that entire paragraph?
What paragraph, what number?
I don't know. I have it in front of me. Where it talks about disclosures of offers.
Section 12.
Here we go.
Okay, I've had a few agents concerned about the words shall and shall not. They would prefer that it had said may and may not. Can you explain why it was written this way?
You mean why we use the word shall rather than may?
Mhm. Well, I know what they both mean. But I'm asking why it was used in this context about offers, especially, on B, buyer representatives may participate in the presentation of any offer to the seller, check below. You either have to check one or the other.
Right. So either your keep reading. It says broker shall or shall not allow a cooperating broker or their representatives to participate in the presentation of their offer to purchase. So the seller has to make that decision on whether or not they're going to allow the other side, because it is in our code of ethics. It's in our code of ethics that says that a cooperating broker has the right to participate, to present, not to have any discussion with the seller or be present for discussions regarding negotiation of the offer, but that they can actually physically sit down with the seller or on a Zoom call or however we do it these days with COVID, and to present what their offer is, that their client's offer is, why their offer is better or worse than maybe other offers, or what they think is better than any offers, and all the finite details. And that has been in our code of ethics forever. And it is also says that the seller has the right to decide whether or not they're going to allow that to happen or not. And it is a discussion that should be had with your client at some point if you have, before you even get an offer, because if you haven't had that conversation with your seller before getting offers.
Good way to be on a meeting, isn't it?
Mary, you got to mute.
I know.
Mary, you got to mute. There you go. Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. All right, try that again. So the reason why you need to have that discussion prior to is because if you're not having the discussion prior to, it looks as if you could be singling out that particular buyer broker in not presenting that particular offer, right? So you want to make that decision before you start getting offers as to whether or not you're going to allow anyone to be able to present or no one to present. You don't want to make that decision when you've got one on the table where you've got, John Doe that wants to present, and now you're making a decision. So, because it looks as if you're,
I'm not sure, Paula, that I understand what you're saying. I'm not
Okay.
sure that the decision has to be made at that time. This is what the concern is. The concern is that every situation is different. And I think what you're saying is that you might be in a position where you're choosing only to allow one agent or broker to present rather than all. I'm not sure that says that in the Code of Ethics. I think the word may or may not allow covers whether or not you will or you won't. This is finite. It says that you shall. So you shall, you can allow, you shall allow. If you check off shall, you shall allow all cooperating brokers in their representatives to participate. So if you've got, 6 offers, 7 offers, 8 offers, you're going to have a line of people presenting. At that time, the seller might not want to have 8 people present. Okay. So I think that was the concern. All I'm doing is bringing up the concern that I've heard, that the words may or may not would have.
Donna,
sufficed.
I'm going to speak to that if I can, and I believe that might be in the Smart MLS rule that the broker can present the offer. And I think that it speaks to the Code of Ethics that you need to do for all what you will do for one, to be fair and equitable in the process. And I think that's why they put it in there. And I think
Tell me
shall
which
or
article
may.
that is, Susie, when you say all for one, tell me which article that is.
I don't believe it is in the Code of Ethics. I believe it's in the Smart MLS rules.
Well, you just brought up Code of Ethics, so I wanted to know which
Yeah,
article.
so doing, in terms of being fair and equitable, I think that it's important that if you're going to allow one to be there to present, that you have to allow all to be there to present. And I believe that was the premise of why they put that in there. Whether it's may or shall, I think is just semantics.
I don't think.
Can I ask you a question?
Contract law, well, excuse me, in contract law, may or shall is not semantics.
Yeah,
Shall
that's
is
different.
finite, may is may. You
That's
may,
correct.
That's right.
Correct.
Yeah, it's very different.
Kathy, I
Can
don't know
someone
if
tell
you have
me?
rules handy? I don't know if that's something that you.
Jack Wessa wants to ask a question.
Thank you. On item C, if the seller checks the brokers or the broker's agent shall not disclose multiple offers, isn't that a violation of our Code of Ethics? I'm confused.
yeah, I didn't get to see yet, but thank you, Jack, for bringing that up.
I don't believe it is.
I'm just gonna.
As long as you have the seller's permission, you may disclose the existence of offers. And that's what this is asking for.
They're talking about offers to offers to let the co-brokes know there's other offers.
Correct.
It's not clear. It's
Right.
not clear in C. I think that could be clearer.
Thank you.
So let's think about
Okay, so
how
I'll
do you,
just read 1-15 for you guys. Standard practice 1-15 realtors in
from
response
the code, from the code.
from the Code of Ethics, in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers shall, with the seller's approval, disclose the existence of offers on the property. Where disclosure is authorized, realtors shall also disclose, if asked, whether offers were obtained by the listing licensee, another licensee in the listing firm, or by a cooperating broker. So this is with the seller's approval. So this listing agreement is preemptive as to what the seller wants in this case when they're
Yeah,
on.
that's the thing I take issue with. It doesn't say it should be at the time of the listing contract.
Yeah, because things can change. I mean, they might get a great offer and they don't want it. They just want to take it. I agree that it should be at the time that so many things are. I understand the value of it in some ways, but I feel that it's definitely more pertinent to at the moment when things come in.
Paula, did you guys talk about
We did.
waiting and what was the rationale or discussion on it?
To be honest with you, I don't remember the entire, this was a big form. And this is something that we probably discussed last summer. Because this part of it, we went over quite a long time ago. But what I can do, and the only thing I can do right now with the concerns that are within the brokers, is to take the concerns back to the forms committee, go back and kind of re-jog their memories as to why we made the decision to do the way we did, because we did discuss exactly what you're saying, and I do remember the discussion, but I don't remember the rationale behind,
Paula.
okay, no, this is the way we should do it. Yep. Heather, do you remember?
Yeah, I think part
Okay.
of the concern was that some agents weren't having this conversation at all, that they weren't, that the conversation or the knowledge wasn't there, that they had the ability to present the offers. Some agents weren't aware that they did have the ability to have that conversation with their sellers, that agents could present offers. Some people didn't know that that was something that was an option that they could discuss with their sellers. I think that there was conversations about the fact that there were agents that were being denied the right to present in person or through Zoom, when in fact that is in fact in the Code of Ethics that they have the right to do that. And agents just weren't aware of that. And the other part was the conversation about multiple offers and the fact that as brokers and agents, it's our duty and our responsibility to have the conversation with the seller and let the seller decide whether or not we disclose to other agents the existence of multiple offers. So I think we were trying to decide if we were preemptive, and we put that language in the listing agreement, would that then prompt those conversations?
Which is good. That's a good.
That was where the dialogue was. And we did have those conversations.
So what do you think about this? What if you left it like it was and you added one more checkbox that said, seller shall decide at time of offer on this issue, or something like that?
That's
Could I
where I
offer
think you
another
can get-
solution?
Sure, Bill.
Sure, go ahead.
This is a contract, and contracts can be modified at any time with the agreement of both parties. So you can have the discussion and decide now the seller shall not disclose multiple offers. Have another discussion when you have multiple offers, or when you have an offer and another agent is offering to, or saying that they're going to present an offer. Have another discussion and modify this agreement, and the seller can change their mind.
That's true too.
I'm gonna read you guys what's in the Smart MLS rules on right of cooperating broker in the presentation of the offer, section 5.4, page 24. It says, except as otherwise provided in this section, a cooperating broker or his or her representative has the right to participate in the presentation to the seller of any offer the cooperating broker secures to purchase or lease the listed property. The cooperating broker does not have the right to be present at any discussion or evaluation of that offer by the seller and the listing broker. However, if the seller gives written instructions to the listing broker that the cooperating broker not be present at the presentation of an offer which the cooperating broker secured, the cooperating broker has the right to a copy of the seller's written instructions, but not the cooperating broker. But the cooperating broker shall have no right to be present at such presentation. None of the foregoing diminishes the listing broker's right to control the establishment of appointments for such presentation. Where the cooperating broker is not present during the presentation of the offer, the cooperating broker can request in writing, and the listing broker must provide written affirmation stating that the offer has been submitted to the seller, or written notification that the seller has waived the obligation. So this is the in writing thing that can be proven that the seller did not want the cooperating broker to be present. I think that had something to do with their decision to put this in the listing agreement.
Well, there's certainly good comments. I think taking it back to the forms committee is appropriate. And
Can I ask one question?
Ruth had her hand up, and then Mary,
Okay.
and then you, Greg.
Okay, so as I understand it, then you're supposed to show this page of the listing contract to the cooperating broker to prove that they didn't have
permission in writing to present their offer? Because I don't think that would probably be a great idea.
No, it's not appropriate.
Right, I mean, you just, if you tell them, you're basing your relationship on trust, so. I mean, we have to base
It
it on
does,
trust.
yeah, it does say in
Code
writing.
of
though.
ethics says,
Yeah,
show the written
that's not a
instructions.
form.
I don't think you have to show the listing agreement, but you can show the written instructions from the seller saying, I do not want brokers presenting offers in person.
Mary, you had your hand up?
Yes, in reference to disclosing multiple offers, we can get by this by just making a blanket statement that says something like seller acknowledges they will have the option to disclose or not disclose multiple offers when applicable. I don't think they need to make the decision now. There's other areas where they're just statements in here, so we're just telling them right now that they'll have the option when it occurs.
I agree.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Guys, this form has been published. It's not in creation right now. It is published, but we will take your concerns back. The board
Yeah,
of
that might have been a mistake.
Susie, I'd like
But we published it before
I
the
guess
department looked at it.
my
Yeah,
question really is,
I'm never a consultant on these big issues, especially in a contract. Why we have these meetings, we're all brokers. We should have some input.
I guess my question really is, what does shall mean then? Shall disclose all the other offers. Does that mean the second I have an offer, I have to notify every showing that there's an offer on the table? Because that's what shall means to me. You know, otherwise,
If
shall, like, I mean, so as soon as somebody asks a question about the house, I shall disclose.
if asked.
It doesn't say if asked.
Yeah,
It
it
says
doesn't say.
It
shall
does
disclose.
actually. 1-15 says realtors in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers shall, with the seller's approval, disclose the existence of offers. So if asked.
I'm sorry, where does it say that?
Say that in the listing
Code of
contract.
ethics, standard of practice 1-15.
No, but the contract with my seller, the listing contract says I shall disclose all offers. So I have a contract with the seller right here saying I must disclose the offers.
Right, and that has to be clarified because it doesn't say you should disclose it to other, co-broke agents. It would be good to modify that, but
I want to know how you interpret it any other way.
It's a valid point you make, and we will take this back to the forms committee, and I would request that anybody that has a strong suggestion one way or another, email it to me and the forms committee can review that.
And we have two
You
more
can-
hands up. I don't know whose were up first. Brian hasn't talked. You're on mute, Brian.
Yep, I got it. Yeah, thank you. So two things. I do think those statements are both premature. I think they're better handled at the time, the things. I understand it and appreciate the forms committee, by the way. That's a lot of work. It's a ton of work to put this stuff together. I don't think, me personally, if I were going to sign this contract today with one of my clients, I would probably line out both B and C. And then always have an objection or somewhat of an objection to the multiple listing system telling me how I'm going to operate my business with my clients. Susie, I understand the language and I've always understood that verbiage in there. Most agents don't know these two things, and putting it into a listing agreement doesn't help them to become informed. It's their brokers and managers and the training and the code of ethics process and those courses that do that. So having a brand new agent from any type of business, and I don't want to name names, but there's different control in different offices, and some offices have no control and no training. So you can't possibly take this document into a listing appointment and have the seller say, well, what's that mean exactly? And they're not going to know anyways what that means exactly. So I don't, like, if I was going to sign it, I would line those two things out simply because I'm not in agreement with it. And that's okay. I think Greg said you can, you can modify a contract and any language in it. And I think less weight needs to be given sometimes to what the MLS, and I know Kathy Elson's on here, has to say in their opinions on stuff. It's already written into the code that fair was taken out of the code of ethics, and MLS brought it back in. So I think there's still a little bit of a battle between, MLS and what we do as a business. And micromanagement, I'm not in agreement with that.
Thank you.
Well-
Greg, Hannah, you wanted to speak, and then Heather, I think you had a question, and then we will take this all back.
Heather's good.
But this isn't a forms committee meeting, but your feedback is very welcome, but we've got other things on the agenda, so we will wrap this up after a couple last questions. Go ahead, Greg Hanner. Greg might be busy. Heather Gagnon.
She said no.
Okay, Bill, you had a question?
We've had a discussion back and forth, and I have a question about the
Okay, yeah, I
delay.
just wanted to add, my comment was relating to presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hang on, Bill. Go ahead, Greg.
Yep.
Greg, you're muted.
He's muted.
Okay, hang on one second. I'm hearing some nasty noise on my end. I'm gonna just stop moving. My comment, if you can hear me now, was that we have an additional form that is confirmation of offer submittal, correct?
Yes,
Can you hear that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so.
it's confirmation that the
Okay,
seller
so the proper,
received the offer, that the listing agent is the one that sends it over. Yes.
right. And what I've always found awkward on that, not that I don't trust other agents, but it's the certification of that confirmation came from the listing agent. If you take the idea of, well, the presentation, if the confirmation of presentation to the seller included a seller sign off, a seller signature, and you had the wording that people understood that there was, that they acknowledged that they received the offer, that helps a little bit, possibly. I just wanted to throw that idea of the seller signature on that form.
That was definitely discussed at the forms committee when they created that.
It's not a requirement of the code, and so that's why we didn't add it. We a lot of it I wanted it added to, Greg. But after a lot of discussion when we were putting that form together, I remember that was the biggest hurdle of getting that form out to everybody was that signature. But because it's not required, it didn't feel right for us to require it on the form. So unfortunately, until they require it to be signed by the seller through COE and who can get on that committee to have that changed on the ethics on the NAR level, I'd love to talk to them. I think that we're kind of stuck with not having it.
Let's wrap up with Bill's last question and then move on to Kathy Elson.
I have a question about delayed listing portion of the listing agreement. Kathy Elson has clarified that we must present offers even during the delayed listing period when we have a delayed listing, and our listing agreement says otherwise, that we cannot present offers.
Language that we used here comes directly from the coming soon addendum that the MLS
Which I also have an issue with,
provides.
but let's not get in that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, and I told Bill, we've had this discussion. I know you called me when this form just came out, rolled out, and it was a concern. And I agree with you that there's something here going on between the MLS rules, NAR, and what we're seeing and what we've got here. We have
But
our
setting
setup.
all that aside, setting all the coming soon issue aside, we have to present offers as soon as we get them. And the delayed listing. unless the seller has already accepted an offer, at which point it's under contract. But prior to that, we've got the same language in our delayed listing. And Kathy has confirmed that we must present offers even during the delay period, regardless of any discussion regarding coming soon.
Okay, so this is a separate issue.
Yeah, we will clarify that with Kathy, that the delayed listing on the listing agreement is in sync with Smart MLS rules, Bill. We'll do that.
We'll
In
take
Connecticut
all
law.
those things back to forms and to MLS. And with that, I think Kathy is on the call. Is she here?
I am.
So please welcome Kathy Elson for visiting our forum this morning, and she's got a couple of things she wants to share with us. And feel free to ask her questions when she's done.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome this nice and sunny August day. So I'm here to review some of the changes that we've made and the trying to maintain an orderly marketplace here in Connecticut. So with that, we changed a number of the status names. It probably didn't have too much effect with you guys out in the e-car area since you guys go direct to contract, but it had an effect in other areas of the state. So we changed the word show to under contract, continue to show, and then we changed the word deposit to under contract. Deposit was heavily confused with, did I get a deposit check? Did the deposit check clear? Was it mailed? Did they think about mailing it? Did they, I don't have to tell you guys everything that goes around the deposit check. So to simplify it and to have it be so it was more clear cut was the contract executed, right? We added a flag mostly for the Lower Fairfield County area where they use non-binding binders for an agreement. And we wanted people to let them know that there was an agreement on there, but it wasn't under contract, right? So in essence, show was being used for two different purposes before, and we just separated those purposes out and made it so it was more clear. The market conditions that were there, like February, March, April, it seems to have died down some. It's not as crazy as it was before, but people were calling us and saying, hey, I don't want to show our listing anymore. We've had 100 showings. We've got a stack of offers, a dozen, 2 dozen offers. Here, my seller wants to go through it, but they don't want to show the property anymore. What status do I put it in? There really wasn't a place to do that. So we created a status flag called under review, which because people didn't want to put their listing under temp. We were getting tons of calls. The listing agent isn't getting back to me, doesn't want to show the property. So for communication purposes we created an under review flag. They could use that for up to 48 hours to let everybody know, hey, this listing's still available. No decision has been made yet, but they're reviewing all the offers. So that status will probably fade away over time as market conditions change. So we did all those, made those changes. We made changes to our photo policy with virtual staging and staging of properties. You guys have probably seen it all out there. You go up to a property and you take a look at what the photos were and it looks nothing like what the photos were. They were virtually altered, painted, additions put on, the property could look like this if at first we took a hard stance and said no virtual altering. We got a fair amount of feedback to say, hey, consumers like it. They don't really have the vision to see what's going on. So you can, we have it so the original photo has to be marked that, hey, this is what's here now, and this is what it could be like, right? So, but they got to be marked on the photo. So if someone's scrolling through the photos anywhere, wherever the photos are syndicated, there's truth in advertising there. So we made those adjustments. We've made a couple other adjustments to things. Let's see. People ask us the question for the AVM opt-out. So if you want an automated valuation next to your property or not, yes or no. So that's been a rule an NAR model MLS rule for years. It never made its way into the system. So we just programmed the system to be compliant with the rules. So if you have an active listing and you don't want another AVM on that listing, you can choose no. If you want to go back and look at all your old listings that are still active and adjust them, you certainly can. Here, hold on, a question just came in via chat. Susie, do you see that question come in?
No, I don't.
I just saw something pop up. Maybe it was a direct thing to me, or maybe it was something else. So yep, temporarily off market versus withdrawn. So we were getting a lot of complaints that listings were on temp for months, right? So temp is a 14-day period of time. Something short is going on, just to let people know that it'll be back on in a relatively short period of time. Withdrawn, if it's going to be a longer period of time, then you've got to use withdrawn. So another way of just communicating what's going on with the listing. And change the sentence.
Kathy, are there any parameters around that temp status? Like, are there reasons why you couldn't use it, or no?
No, so if it's gonna, so a lot of times you might, people were using temp even when they still have their listing agreement, right? So they don't want to cancel their listing agreement because they still want to be under contract. The sellers decided not to sell or whatever reason. So that would be the reason to use withdrawn. There's no intent for the listing to come back on the market. So with a temp listing in a relatively short period of time, the listing will be back available for sale. So that way agents and consumers know, when it's temp, keep an eye out for it. When it's withdrawn, it's probably not coming back anytime soon.
And temp status, no showings, no offers?
No showings, no ad. With temp status, the sign can still be there because it's temporarily off the market. With withdrawn, all marketing's got to stop. So a lot of people were using it, keeping the sign in the ground and doing it withdrawn. Yeah, Mary, you got a question?
Yeah, well, what happens if it's coming back on the market, but it's going to take a little bit longer than 2 weeks? Like I had a property that had a leak. By the time you got a contractor out there and repaired, it took a month. So can you still put it under withdrawn and leave the sign up?
So the sign, if it's going to be longer than 2 weeks, then just take the placard of the sign down. It just, there can't, consumers and other agents have to know what's going on with the property.
Okay, so what if it's something like that happens? So it's under withdrawn. Somebody calls you on it, what's going on? You tell them. What if somebody still throws an offer out there without even saying it?
Yeah, then it'd have to be presented.
Okay, so it's possible that it can be accepted when it's in a withdrawn status. Okay.
So Kathy, quick question on that. So, when you as a group on the board of directors decide these types of things, just give me some background on how something like this would even come up. And you're always referencing the consumer and fairness and agents. And I think a lot of times what gets left out is the client. It's the listing client. So explain to me how a group of, just briefly, because I know it's a short meeting, 6, 8, 10 people in a room, and how's this topic come up? Did someone say, hey, I drove by a sign once and it wasn't available, or there was a panel off, or, this specific question about the sign, 2 weeks?
This is, so the temporary and the withdrawn were CTMLS rules from back in the day when CTMLS was created. So it's rules you guys have always had. It's new to the GFC side. We only had withdrawn. We didn't have the temp. So having the distinguish, so to know, the only reason to have a temp status is if it's going to be a short period of time. So people know, because people were withdrawing the listings and didn't have any idea. We get calls all the time. This listing's been, temp for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, a whole bunch. So feedback on input from other agents, right? So we don't make any rules that we don't have people complaining about or having an issue for. So everything's vetted and goes through.
I understand that. The part that didn't get answered in that response was about the sign, about my sign, about my client's sign on their
Because you can't
property.
advertise a listing, so the listing can't be, if it's not for sale, it can't be advertised to other people. So people then were withdrawing their listings, keeping the sign up to have all the calls go to them and to try to double end deals.
Well, you're confusing with the withdrawn and temp. Because the temp, you know, if it's temp, it's more than 2 weeks, you got to take the sign down. No, it's still a listed property. And, you know, we keep going back to these things about the agents crying that, hey, I'm not getting a fair shake. So when will this stop, do you think? Because I can't imagine that these calls are persistent as you say they are. It should be some type of tracking mechanism where you can be accountable to me, to us as a group of people to say, hey, here's the 47 plus people that just last week said, wow, this is a big change in the market. Because frankly, I don't see it. And I might be in a different area than other people, but I don't see these things happening in temp withdrawn. Once in a blue moon, something's on temporary for an extended period of time.
Yeah, we get them all the time. We get the inquiries all the time, so.
All right, can we track?
We've
these
got plenty of
inquiries?
things to do then to make unnecessary rules, right? So.
Can we see these statistics, Kathy, as they're coming in? Can you guys keep
No.
like a monthly log of something somewhere? I mean, there needs to be, or I think it would be helpful to me anyways. Let me rephrase it. Helpful to me for my understanding. And so when I'm talking to my agents and saying, hey, these are the rules and here's the logic behind the rules, is 139 people just last month said, wow, I went by this sign and I couldn't find it in MLS. And I think that would be helpful. I think some transparency and, you know, from the smart MLS versus just making these rules up as they go along. I think it'd be a great idea. How about you as far as that and as an idea?
Yeah, I think we're pretty transparent in what we do. I'll bring that comment back to the board of directors. This was an existing rule, so we didn't change it. It was just
wait.
Enhanced.
About the signs is not an existing rule. You're matching these two things together because it's convenient for you. That there was no specific clarity about you can't have a sign up, and you're taking the statuses and just adding that in. That's my real objection.
Okay.
And we don't need to talk about it. We can talk about it offline. But yeah, I would like more transparency from MLS about these reports that are continuing to come in.
Okay. What other questions do we have? No, with that, then I'll let you guys get on with your day. Enjoy your weekend. Happy selling.
Kathy, I want to thank you for coming on today. And Smart MLS has agreed to sponsor our resource conference. So somebody will be at Foxwoods September 22nd and 23rd at a table for additional one-on-one time with your questions. So thanks again, Kathy, for all that you do. It's not an easy job you have.
Thank you,
Good luck,
Kathy.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Agreed.
All right, we spent a lot of time on the listing agreement and MLS. So quickly on the, everybody's seen the info out on Public Act 21-167. I'm gonna just put it up in the chat. It's on real estate professionalism and teams. There's new rules on what it takes to become a broker in Connecticut. So if you're interested, if all of you or most of you are brokers, so you don't, that doesn't apply. But if you have some of your agents, look it up. The new requirement for your licensing was going to change from March till the fall. So although we haven't seen the exact info on that, and the real estate teams is the big one. Sure, it's causing some of our people in real estate in e-car some angst, but it was better than being eliminated, which was also on the table. And Carol, feel free to jump in on any of these things. The team, it has to be at least 2 people. There's very specific things on what the name of the team has to be. And please look up that thing, the Public Act. The rules have not been instituted. And maybe Carol can give us an update. The last time I spoke with her, it was going to be a while because the state has big things going on with marijuana and other issues in the state. So they are going to get to getting out the requirements on this Public Act, but they have not done it yet. Do you have any new date, Carol?
There is no date as of this time, just so that everybody understands. The state can't write regs until there's something in statute. There was nothing in statute about teams. There's never been anything in statute about teams. And this all started because the DCP said, there's no such thing as teams in Connecticut. We're going to start finding people who are working as teams. Teams are illegal in Connecticut. So this was something that was worked on between CTR and the DCP and the Real Estate Commission for over 2 years. And this is the compromise we came up with, because if we couldn't come to some sort of solution between the three entities, they were just going to say no teams, period. So this was worrying about what you wish for. Sometimes you're going to get something bad. So people may have problems with it, but the alternative was no teams.
So there's a reminder to make sure you get your, whatever you're going to do with your team name, get that to eCar so we can update the records to comply, and then it has to comply with MLS too. Do you want to go over the Connecticut legislative summary, Carol?
Sure.
Okay.
So
there was a lot on the agenda this year.
Bonnie, before we move on from broker requirements and team, does anyone have any questions?
That's true.
Bonnie and I did a video that pretty much spelled out what's listed in this FAQ with regard to the name. You cannot use any other name to describe your team, like associates or company or group. It has to be the word team. Anything more than 1, 2, or more is a team. And of those two, there must be at least one licensee, right? Or is it 2? Both.
No, 2 licensees.
You cannot have one licensee and somebody who is not licensed, and that be a team. So if there's any questions about that, it's kind of important. In the past, there's been, we've had one, an example of one agent setting up a name that seems like there's more people involved. That would be against this new regulation. You can't appear to the public to be more than one and call yourself something that looks like that. Has to use the word team, has to be at least 2 licensees. So those are the really big points. Plus there's going to be a new fee for that.
Bill has a question.
I have a question, not about teams, but about the broker changes.
Yep.
I think I heard you briefly say that brokers are going to renew in October, or did I read that in a newsletter?
November 30th, I want to say.
It changed from March to the fall, and I don't know the date exactly.
November 30th.
Okay.
And will that change with next year in 2022?
2022 is going to be prorated.
Okay.
The question I had, Carol, and you can bring this back to the state, was, and I've asked Catherine to look into it. So for the brokers' requirements for classes, how are they going to handle that? Do you know?
That I'm not really sure, but I mean, right now your cycle ends for this next March renewal, so it really shouldn't. Maybe we're just going to get an extra 6 months on the next cycle, but you still need to complete your cycle for March 31st.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll need to pay for up to March, and then in November, there will be the prorated amount. Is that right?
I'm not 100% sure on which way they're doing it.
Yeah.
But it will change. As soon as we get more specifics, we'll get the information out to everybody. Heather has her hand up.
Yeah, hi, Carol. Question on the 1,500 hours. So as supervising brokers, how are we supposed to quantify that 1,500 hours?
That's a very good question, Heather. And I think that when the DCP comes out with everything, we're going to try to see if we can get that fleshed out a little bit better. I think that what they were looking at was like when you're an apprentice for a different thing, like if you're an apprentice for contractors or HVAC or all those different things, they have to do 2,000 hours within 2 years. So they kind of looked at what would be a regular amount of time. I think that this equates to a full-time job at 37.5 weeks a year. I don't think that they're exactly expecting you to run a time card on them or anything like that. I mean, this is just my guess. This has nothing to do with what it's going to be. But I think that they're looking for the broker to put some skin in the game that, you know, a broker said, yes, you've been in the office, you've been actively in real estate, and understand that the 4 transactions, we were trying for 20 or 25 and they were saying nothing doing. So currently there's no sales quotient in getting a broker's license. So you could sit around for 2 years, do nothing, take the test, take the other requirements and be a broker with having never sold anything.
Yeah,
So
I
at
think
least
4
got
is too low.
something. It's very low and everybody who worked on it thinks it's extremely low.
Yeah.
But understand that some of the legislators are also realtors that don't have their broker's license. And I think that they were a lot of our stumbling block to getting a larger number because we started with 20 or 25, which even I still think might even be too low, but something's better than nothing. So, but I think that they're looking for the broker to sign off so the broker can say, I've seen this person work. I know that this person, I'm not going to say that you're going to have to give them a 1,500 hour timesheet, but you're signing off, you're putting some skin in the game saying this person is a good, option to become a broker. It's not somebody I've never seen for the last 2 years. And now they're asking me to sign off on something.
Okay.
It's even less in Rhode Island, by the way. Has there been any talk about changing reciprocity with Rhode Island or Mass because of these changes?
Bill, I don't know that right now. I think until the regs come out, and these are questions that I'm going to continue to add. That first 24 FAQ that came out directly came from the team's work group going back to DCP based on what they agreed to, saying, how do you answer this question and this question? And we're going to continue to collect questions, and I will write that one down about reciprocity to make sure that how that's going to work, because I really have no idea. I think until they actually publish some regs, we're not going to really know what they're thinking.
Okay. And then you want to talk about the legislative summary and
Honey, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. This goes back to the teams section. Am I to understand correctly? It has to be the full name as opposed to the last name on the team, unless they want to say at the broker's company. It has to be like Jimmy Jones team, not Jones team.
Until they actually publish the regs, I won't know that for sure. But my understanding is if you're, I know you're not going to like this, but I'm just going to pick on Bill because Bill's like right there. I see Bill. If Bill's real name is William and William is what his legal name is, they're going to name him be William Fain at wherever Bill works.
That's
so
not
that's
cool.
going to be another issue. So we're waiting to see what they're going to do about that. We also don't know if you're like the Carol and Terry Christiansen team, which is my husband's name, if they're going to make you be Carol Christiansen and Terry Christiansen. And if you're going to, we just don't know any of this stuff. This is all stuff that we're continuing to write questions about so that we know. But as it was, as the team's work group worked with them, the understanding was that it was going to be, you could be Bill Fain team, or you can be the Fain team at wherever you work. I'm sorry, I don't know where you've moved around. So anyway, so that's my understanding, but I don't want to be quoted on anything because until the regs come out, we don't know for sure.
Yeah. But if you have specific questions, please send them to
Yes,
Susie.
send them to Susie, send them to me, send them to CTR, because that FAQ list is probably going to be over 100 questions by the time we're done. That first 24 was just what we could think of as the team's work group, but we want to continue to send questions to DCP so that when they're formulating these regs, they take all these questions into consideration.
Okay, all right. Want to do a quick summary on the legislative issues, Carol?
Right, well, I've got something written, so part of it will probably be redundant, but I'm going to say it so I don't forget anything.
Okay.
So first of all, I just want to say that, you know, this year was really strange because the LOB office was only open to legislators and some staff. So when we were talking about testifying, we always had to testify over Zoom. And when you're testifying over Zoom, you're looking at one person who's the chair of the committee you're testifying in front of, but you also know that the entire committee's in the background. Anybody who wants to testify may be listening to you, as well as any member of the public, because those committee meetings are all public. So it's pretty intimidating when you're looking at one person on the screen, but you might be talking to thousands of people at one time. And the other thing that happened during Zoom is when you testified in the past, you'd go up to the LOB office and you'd wait around and you'd be number 14, and then they'd get stuck on number 3, and number 3 is there for an hour. So you end up saying, I'm not staying, and I leave. But because of Zoom, nobody left. And on some of these bills, they had several hundred people wanting to testify. So I actually testified on a bill at 11:45 at night one time after sitting on meetings since 10 o'clock in the morning. So it was a little bit crazy. And I think that the legislators hated it because they didn't get to do that lobbying, and then they just sat on Zoom looking at one face after another for hours and hours and hours. But I mean, hopefully next year it's not going to be like that. So we're all going to cross our fingers on that. The biggest success we had this year was the defeating the buyer's conveyance tax. That was House Bill 6441, which would have let municipalities enact a new buyer's conveyance tax that could have been paid by the buyer, the seller, or a combination of both. CTR worked with the Connecticut financial industry and the Home Builders Association in opposition. We used our text message and email notification systems, and we had over 11,000 member emails that were sent to the committee. And in addition, NAR gave us a $90,000 grant to assist us in the opposition of the bill, which we used for advertisements and political publications and billboards across the state. After many conversations with legislative leadership as to the harmfulness of this concept, we were able to have this removed from the bill, but we're sure we're going to see it again next year because we're constantly seeing conveyance taxes all the time. They thought they were sneaky by calling it a fee, but we all knew that it was not a fee, it was a tax. Another thing was the professionalism in teams bill, which Bonnie already mentioned, so I won't go through that again, but I just wanted to make it really clear that we find, even though we still think it could be better, we still think this is a win, because the alternative was that teams were going to become illegal in Connecticut and that the DCP was going to start fining people for enforcing violations. So more on that as that comes, and we're continuing to collect questions while they continue to write the new regs. So just keep on sending those questions when you think about them. Another thing that was really hot during this session was the zoning laws. There was a zoning law in there that was basically going to allow anybody to build anything anywhere they wanted to because they were trying to help with desegregation. But we shared our concerns with legislative leadership, and a compromise bill was enacted, which was HB 6107. This talks about accessory apartments. This talks about auxiliary dwelling uses. It eliminated the term character of the district in consideration with zoning decisions and replaced it with physical site characteristics. And it requires local planning and zoning officials to complete at least 4 hours of training every 2 years, because we talked about that as well. It was a very hot topic. We know it's going to continue to move on to next year. There was changes to real estate license law. Bonnie also said this, that they're going to have the annual expiration date for real estate brokers will be November 30th. The law has a prorated license fee for 2022 to account for the transition. The administrative fees are going to be $4 every year instead of $8 every other year, and the fee does not increase. Let's see, it says the fee for continuing education courses will still only be required every other year. So you'll still be I guess it'll still be 2024 will be the next one, regardless of whether it's November, but it'll be November. We talked about a bill, there was a bill about the disclosure of awareness about dams on a property. And that was supported by us and that became a law. That's going to be something in the disclosure about if you're aware of any dams on the property. We worked on the first time home buyer savings account. This is something we've been working on for at least 7 years that I know of. Everybody in the house loves it. This is where an employer can put money into a savings account that's tax-free to help people save money to buy a house. Everybody loves this, but there's just no money at the state for it right now, but we're hoping that it's going to continue to work on that. We made sure there was no statewide property tax. We made sure there was no strict liability for landlords with lead paint, no rent control, no energy scoring or stretch codes, and no permanent provisions for the foreclosure mediation program. So that's pretty much what we did this year. And you can always talk to me anytime if you have any questions. Sorry, I did it really fast because I was trying to do it quick.
Yeah, thank you. Tell everybody about the picnic.
Okay, so I'm the president of CTR currently, and as you know, at least up until July 1st, I haven't done anything in person with anybody. I have had no installation, I've had no meetings, everything's been on Zoom. So as of July 1st, I had said July 1st, we're going to start trying to open it back up again. Unfortunately, I didn't know that COVID was going to become more rampant once again, but currently we are planning a picnic at Hammonasset State Park on September 14th. It's from 11 to 2. It is a catered lunch. We're going to have dessert trucks. We're going to have a DJ. We're going to have lawn games. It is a free event, but it is capped at how many people can attend. And although it is free, we are asking people to make a donation to our Connecticut Charitable Fund in the amount of $9.11. This is to commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and we will be sending that money to the NAR's Realtor Relief Fund. So I hope you guys will come. There's no agenda, there's no speakers. This is just a fun thing to get together and see each other. It's outside, there's a pavilion, you can go to the beach, you can bring your bike, you can do whatever you like, but it's just a fun thing for everybody to get together. So, and you can sign up on that at the CTR website.
What day of the week is that?
It's September 14th. I put it in the chat.
I think it's a Tuesday. It's during the week. I think it's a Tuesday.
So we have a question from Camille. I just want to point out with this heavy legislation year, the wins we had were thanks very much to everybody who donated to RPAC. And I'm going to give Marilyn one quick plug.
You just took my line. I was going to say that didn't happen for free just because of Carol's presence up in Hartford. That's our RPAC money standing behind the people who testified up there. So if you haven't made your RPAC investment, please do so. And for all my major investors, you should be getting an invitation soon. If you haven't made your investment, to come to our major investor event at Foxwoods the evening before the RPAC, the resource conference. We're doing a phone bank on Thursday next week. We're going to, if you haven't signed up for your text messages, Carol, you know what that number is if you want to throw it out there, because I never remember it.
You can text CTR to 52886. But when you do that, it's going to give you a series of prompts. And what happens is people think they signed up, but they didn't finish doing the prompts. And if you want to do it easier and quicker, you can go to ctrealtors.com/text.
Susie, can you put that in the chat?
Yeah, I just did. And I'll just give you guys a barometer for ECAR. You guys should give yourselves a big pat on the back. ECAR has contributed to RPAC $24,871. That's the dollar goal. That's 171% of the goal that NAR had for us. We also exceeded the number of people that participated this year. We're at 55%, which is 520 of our members. And we have 11 major investors. You guys, we are heavy hitters in RPAC. So I want to thank you. Please pass that down to your agents. But we are also really in need of getting everybody onto the text message opt-in system. So I've got the links for RPAC in there. I've got the links for the text message. Please reiterate to your agents when you have an office message that every one of our agents needs to be opted into the text message system. And to incentivize you to do that, CTR has money for the local boards to help with that. And we are using the money that we got to offer anyone who has participated or opted in for text messages, whether before or going forward up to the resource conference. If they opt in, they are automatically entered into a drawing for a free conference registration and a hotel room as the grand prize, and a free conference registration as the second prize. So that's a good incentive if they haven't opted in to please do so. So there you go.
So back to my my major investors. Susie mentioned that we have 11, but we normally, our ECAR carries the state with the number of major investors. I had 66 major investors last year in the state of Connecticut, and 36 of those were from ECAR. So thank you to those who, Mary, yes, thank you. And there's several others on here who are major investors, and I appreciate that. And the number this year is 80, so I'll be looking for a few more. So if anyone wants to step up and become a major investor, let me know. ASAP, send me a quick email. It's Marilyn@marilynlusher.com, and I'll send you an invitation to the major investor event and get you signed up.
Yes,
So.
we'll have an NAR speaker flying in for that. And it will be a pretty exclusive event at High Rollers at Foxwood, September 21st.
So before we go on to give you an update about the resource, Camille, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just had a question, just going back to timeframes on handing any information or questions about the listing agreement. I know Paula's and her team worked really hard on that in the committee. Just want to know if there's a time frame about getting those comments in, and also comments on the questions on the broker's license requirements and that.
Sure. The Forms Committee meets the first Wednesday of every month. Their next one is September 1st. I send out their package the Friday before. So you got a couple of weeks to throw your comments together so I can send them out to the committee.
And as far as the DCP making the regulations, we don't know when they're going to do it. So as soon, anytime, now till they do it, get some info to Carol or to Susie on that for the broker's requirements.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, Susie, we have the resource conference to talk about, and if anybody wants to talk about some other issues, but really great program lined up. You want to hit the highlights, Susie?
Sure. We've got Lee Brown coming in. She's going to do 2 segments. She is the NAR's sweetheart from the South. She's a great dynamic speaker. I think the 7 deadly sins of sales was one of them. I forget the other one. Marky Lemons Royale, 100 of you got your ePro certification 3 years ago when she came. She's coming back for 6 elective credits. She's a dynamo, will give you social media video tips and much, much more. Brian Blasco is a super, super funny motivational speaker. He's got a hilarious way of describing communication using 4 different types of cars. So those are our national speakers. Lawrence Yun will provide an economic update. It may be recorded, but you'll get the latest, including Connecticut stats. We have also thrown in an implicit bias course. It will not be at the conference, but those who attend the full conference will be able to attend an implicit bias class, which is a mandatory class. You cannot continue your license if you don't get it by next May. And that will be happening on October 1st. Anyone who buys the full conference package will have a coupon for a free implicit bias course. The trade show is really shaping up. We've got, I think, about 18 registered. So we're continuing to add people to that. So please don't let us down. Encourage your members to go. Right now, the full conference is $179 for 2 days at Foxwoods. It's not a cheap place to go to. There's food involved. The trade show will have a happy hour as well as lunch and breakfast. Let's see, what else do I want to say? I think it's $99 for 1 day, either day.
Be a great event.
And it's 50, so 165. So we will continue to promote that. Please get your agents signed up so that all our affiliates and vendors feel the value out of it. And you guys will definitely feel the value if you go. One other thing I wanted to mention is that there is a revised membership application. I will throw that in the chat. There are certain sections in there that now have to be initialed, and things like no refunds and having to take code of ethics. So have a look at that. I'll throw it there, and we'll send that out to you in a separate email so you have that. I don't know if you know, but we previously announced that realtors can now sponsor events.
Yeah.
The board of directors did approve that with the caveat of no recruiting. So for an example, at the resource conference, if you wanted to get your name out there in print as a promotion, you can do that, but the realtors will not have the option to have a table because there would probably be no other reason than to recruit. So so there's that. And Bonnie and I have started going out on office visits. We went to William Ravis. What was the other one? We went to Willow.
We went to see Willow.
So we are hoping to have some really good news with regards to our budget, but I can't share that yet because it hasn't been passed. That's happening in the next couple of weeks. And we would love to go visit your offices. We are all very much aware of the increasing COVID numbers. So we are recommending strongly that you guys all use the wearing masks indoors, regardless of vaccination. We will be practicing that at ECAR, and we are keeping things sort of to a minimum in terms of having people in the office. Our door is open, but we request that you wear the masks. Bonnie, is there anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to open it up to the forum to see if there's some issues on professionalism or anything that anybody has wants to discuss before we end.
Two other things before we do open it up. There is a trivia night in lieu of a membership meeting in August. Okay. The YPN committee has a trivia night on August 17th at the Outer Limit company is that in Mystic? Groton from 5 to 7, August 17th. So I hope you'll support that. It is a fundraiser as well. Oh, the golf tournament. The affiliates have put together a golf tournament. We haven't had a golf tournament in years, but this is in place of our Spirit of Pink wine tasting event. That will be October 6th. That is at the golf course in Griswold. I forget the name of that golf course, but so stay tuned for those 3 events coming up. And now we can open it up to any other issues on professionalism that you would like to discuss.
Anybody seeing anything happen out there? Madonna. Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I don't know where the button is for raising my hand. So, hello. I have a couple of things that I would like to just throw out there while the brokers are together that I would like the forms committee to consider. I think I mentioned them to Susie at one point. One is a form which it has to be signed by both brokers if there's a change in commission on a seller concession. Now, I'm not talking about the MLS commission remarks where you can put in that you're not going to pay a commission, you're going to be paying on a net sale without seller concession. I'm not talking about that. What happens regularly is during an actual contract negotiation, after everything is done, at the very end, you'll have an agent say, oh, by the way, you're not going to get paid on the seller concession. First of all, I don't agree with that. We're supposed to be paid on the sale price. However, if it's done correctly and it's published in MLS, that's one thing. But when it's not, I believe the only way that you can change a commission is broker to broker, not agent to agent, but broker to broker. So I'd like the forms committee to consider putting a form out that has to be signed by both brokers when there's a change, so that if an agent at the end of a contract, during a contract, and at the end says, hey, by the way, you're not going to get paid, it's up to the broker to agree. If the broker does not agree, it's on the form. If the broker agrees, it's on the form, and both brokers have to sign, because agents are making these decisions without their broker's knowledge, and I don't believe it's correct, number one. That's the first form I'd like considered. The second one, and Bill, maybe you can bear me out on this. Rhode Island has the better responses to inspections. This stuff of replying to inspections and asking for repairs or remedies by email should not be the way that agents conduct business. There should be a form. That's why we have forms. E&O insurance requires we use forms, not emails. So, Bill, you know, in Rhode Island, there's a form to request a remedy, and there's another form that the seller responds to the request. So please, maybe, you know, take a look at the way that we have a form. Our form for requesting remedies has been a complaint of most realtors forever. They don't like to use it because it doesn't have a place for response. I'm not saying put the response on the same form. Bill, as you know, there's two separate forms, one for a remedy request and one for the seller's response. Please consider those. I think it would make it a better situation in contract negotiations, and also, you know, coming out at the end with a meeting of the minds by all parties rather than emails. Emails don't come from necessarily from the client. They go back and forth from the agents. It's not the correct way to do it. So maybe we can improve on that.
Donna, could you share those forms so we could look at those?
Sure, absolutely. I can do that. Bill has
There's
them.
actually 3 forms, and
Okay.
it's a state law, and it's quite complicated and often not handled correctly. I'd be happy to have a discussion with anyone offline about how it's handled in Rhode Island, but it is kind of a lengthy discussion, and it's, I'm glad you think it's better. I'm not sure it's better than how it's handled in Connecticut, but that's my own opinion.
I like our form for request, but maybe there could be a reply to it. I don't know. It's a good suggestion. Those are good suggestions. Camille,
If you want to go ahead and email those forms to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just for your information to see if there's any way to improve our responses to inspection requests and remedies.
okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, Camille's next.
Yeah, I'm just going to, a couple of comments on that. Our form at the bottom requires it to become part of the remedy request form, requires it to become part of the contract. And a lot of attorneys don't want that to be sent in, or some of the banks do not want that. So that's one thing to understand. The second thing is when you say emails, Donna, do you mean that an agent is just saying, you know, we want this done or that done, and not sending it as a letter or as a copy and paste directly from the email, from the seller via email? You mean that agents are actually writing up the response as opposed to?
They're basically saying, well, this is what my seller wants, and sending a lengthy email of a list, you know.
Without the seller's signature or verification.
Signature.
Right, I agree with you on that.
That's not right. It should be it should be a legal document.
Yeah, it should not be an email where the seller does not have a signature in that email, in my opinion. So whatever form we come up with, whether it's, you know, the Rhode Island, they just have some things in the form that I think are good. I agree with Bill. It's a lengthy, a complicated form, but I think if we look at it, we might be able to pick out some things that would benefit us in creating a situation where negotiations, not only do they become quicker, but they are more, quote, legal in a sense where you don't have issues coming up after the fact.
Maybe
My
Bill.
understanding, I just want to comment. My understanding is that the seller, it shouldn't be on any of our forms, none of our, a letter with our letterhead on it, or I even am thinking even with having a form from eCar, because it has to be a letter. Just let the sellers write their own letter. They can send it over, scan it, or fax it. So it's directly all from the seller. As opposed to getting anybody else involved with letterhead and that. That was my understanding, that it's just has to be directly not information, but requests from the seller. And then all we are is passing that over to them. And we're getting cut out of, any kind of responsibility of the response or remedy or anything. It's really between the seller directly to the buyer, and we're just the intermediary.
Well, it should definitely have a signature and a date, because those dates are part of whether you're complying with the contract or not. So if people aren't using something with a date and signature, then that's inappropriate. So
I think also, just to finish up here, I think as brokers, we also have to consider our E&O insurance. And I really think this is a place where a lot of things become very muddled in negotiations of what's happening and what's doing what and who's doing what and when it's supposed to be done and all of these things. If we have a form that is an eCar form, then we're complying with our state, our E&O insurance requirements. I know my insurance requires that I use state or local board forms. So I want my agents to comply with that. I don't want them either emailing these kinds of things, or also, Camille, I respect what you're saying, but I think it can be done on a form. If you're going to have a seller send you a letter that's signed, they could also put it on the form, or it can be attached to the form, signed, see attached letter in the form is signed.
Okay.
Greg.
I have a slightly different topic. So if somebody wants to continue on this topic, that's fine.
Paula first.
Paula first.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to interject really quick. I'm hearing the discussion, and I'm having flashbacks of working on the purchase and sales agreement a couple of years ago, and the discussion about this section of the contract and how we decided to draft it based on different methods that we've seen agents use, and what was the purpose and the intent of that section. And if you read it carefully, our purchase and sales agreement doesn't require a form for a request. It says a written response. And so it is up to the interpretation of that agent on how they wish to go forward. It doesn't have to be signed, but it has to be a written response. And we did leave it that way because we do have agents that don't use the remedy clause, but although we would like everyone to, but they don't, and that's okay. But we also do have a form if you would like to use the form. As far as the E&O insurance, that I can't speak to because I don't know exactly if it would be a issue with your E&O for not using the form if our contract states it only has to be a written response and it doesn't mention a form that has to be used. But I think that it's a valid question and something that the forms committee should at least have a discussion about in that context of the purchase and sales and that remedy and that interaction between the two documents. But also would love to see some E&O policies and what the verbiage is, and potentially have to bring it up to our attorneys to confirm or not confirm the use of the form needs to be used.
Okay, Greg.
One question about jumping back to teams. Are teams, once they're an entity, are they going to require their own E&O insurance? Does anybody have an idea on that answer?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Carol, you can take it back.
Put it on your list, Carol.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like your broker, I mean, you're not the broker, so I would say no, but I don't know.
But you're creating a new entity.
You're creating an entity, though. The entity is in Connecticut. if you're an LLC or a corporation, you have to have your own broker's license. So like, for instance, I have to have two broker's license. If I want to keep my personal broker's license, I have to pay for that. And I also have to pay for the entity, which is, my corporation. So if you're creating an entity, I'm assuming you probably will.
But you don't need to be a broker to be a team now. They're saying that you just need to be a licensed agent.
Right.
That's a different topic, but I'm just wondering what's the policy going to be? Is the entity covered underneath the broker's insurance, E&O insurance, or have you created a new entity? Again, because you have to register each of your members. So again, you're a business within a business. Are you going to have to, treat that? I mean, is it a complete new business that needs its own insurance? So I don't know.
Carol, have you heard anything about that being discussed?
I don't believe that the DCP's intent was everybody had to make an LLC out of their team. I think that they just needed to register as a team with the DCP. So you can be Greg Broadbent, you have a broker's license, and then you can be Team Greg Broadbent or whatever, and you can have 16 people on your team. So you do the registration as your team, and your team is Greg Broadbent team, and then you that is separate license under the DCP regs, but it doesn't have to be an legal entity. It just has to be registered that way. It's like my company has more than one. Masha's the broker of the participant broker of my company. So Masha has a license, but Masha also has, an LLC for our LIFRO, an LLC for doing business as Remax Realty Group. I think that's how they're doing it. They're not doing it that you have to do another new legal entity. But I don't know until the regs come out. But I wrote it down. So
Okay.
keep getting the questions.
All right, we got to wrap it up, guys. One last thing I just thought of that I want to tell you is that I'm working with a translation services. Our purchase contract is going to be translated into Spanish and Chinese in the near future, and we are working with them to partner. They becoming an affiliate to provide or be available to you as realtors to use for translation service as well. So I'm happy to announce.
For a fee. For a fee.
Yeah, for a fee. So Bonnie, go ahead and wrap it up. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for.
Yeah, thank you for your very good questions.
Lots to take back.
Lots to take back. And thanks for participating, and hope to see you in a couple months. Hope to see you at the picnic. So.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
See you later. And then executive team, we're going to stay on. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.